Now is our time for meditation, so I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Let the chair completely support you. As we begin to, if you're comfortable, close your eyes. We'll start taking some deep breaths in and letting it go. Feel your shoulders relaxing as that beautiful breath of God breathes you into the quiet. I invite you to see that breath going in and out of your heart space as we acknowledge that presence and that power of God that we are in this moment. And as such, we are that love of God in expression. And so as you're breathing in and breathing out, see and feel that expansion of your heart space, filling with the love that you are. God is love, and therefore so are we, as divine expressions of the One. We breathe in and we feel what it feels like to be that love in expression, to know the truth. And now with that feeling of love and peace in your heart, I invite you to bring into mind a situation, someone maybe you thought hurt your feelings, or the outcome wasn't what you would have liked. And so there's still an uneasiness there. So I invite you to bring that situation now right into your heart space and infill it with the love that is already there. See this person or this one of perceived unhappiness, unresolution. See that coming into that love in your heart and being completely enfolded and surrounded by that peace of God that you are, by that love that you came here to be. Now I invite you to sit in a moment of silence, feeling that love for this particular person or situation in the silence. There is no situation whatsoever that enough love cannot heal. The love that you are is here to express. And as a part of that, we are here to learn, to move through these uncomfortable feelings into that place of forgiveness. Because in truth, that is where the freedom lies. When we have peace in our hearts, it is the greatest feeling in the world. And so we leave behind any unforgiveness. and come into that understanding that love is really all there is. It's all that we really need for healing to take place in our own hearts, in the hearts of those we love, and on our planet. So we say thank you, indwelling Spirit, for this opportunity to remember how precious and special each one of us is, to bring our light, our particular spiritual gifts into fruition on this planet at this particular time. And for this knowing and for this acknowledging who we are, we say thank you. Thank you, indwelling Spirit, for this truth that we know will truly set us free. So now, whenever you're ready, bring your focus back into the room and just open those beautiful eyes. So many of you know that for the first time in years, I got to go to convention this year. And so on June the 13th, I got on an airplane and I flew 2 different flights in order to get to Kansas City, to the home of Unity Village, where I was to be a part of the ordination of Mark Hicks, the producer of TruthUnity.net. One of my students, when I was ministering back in Texas, became an ordained minister, and so it was really important to me that I get there on time, and I had a bunch of you praying for all of those connections to take place and the car to be there at the airport, and all of that unfolded with such ease and grace. I was so grateful. I got to Unity Village 40 minutes from Kansas City, Missouri, and got there in plenty of time to be a part of that piece, and enjoyed the entire week of connecting with everybody and having lunches and dinners and breakfasts with people that I hadn't seen in years, and seeing colleagues and attending sessions. And I even got to have dinner with Gary and Deb Hild. They had me over to their home in Kansas City. I got one of Chef Gary's home-cooked meals. I had a fabulous time. And then I flew back here to Florida on Friday the 17th, late at night. I did have a little bit of a delay getting back, but then Saturday morning I started getting all these text messages and emails, all these people that had gotten COVID while they were at the convention. So I ran over to Walgreens and I got a test. I came home and I tested negative on Saturday, but on Sunday I tested positive. So I was one of the ones. It's like we came to this convention and it became like a super spreader, and we all came back and had to quarantine then for the next 10 days. At first, I was like a little bit miffed, because I thought, you know what? I know who was at that banquet with me on Thursday night, who was coughing the entire time. And, I started to do that little go into that ego blame thing. And then I realized, every single one of us that was there had choices and opportunities to do things differently, and we didn't. We didn't. And so we created this opportunity for us to come back and have forced rest. So instead of feeling bad about it and going into that blame and guilt thing, I just relaxed into knowing that what my body needed was sleep and fluids, and sleep and fluids, and so moved through it seamlessly. Well, this month, every month, we have a different focus. And so we're working on a life wheel of all the different aspects of our life. And so we've been going through these various pieces of our pie chart, right? And so this month, July, we're working on family, because you know how important family is to all of your life. All of your relationships have to do with family. And so embracing forgiveness is what we're talking about for this month. Because you cannot have a family of origin and not have forgiveness work that you need to do, right? All of us have that. These well-meaning people from our childhood that said things to us that we know is really not the truth of us, but we took that in. And so we're working on now knowing the truth of who we are and knowing how precious and special we are and how powerful we are and that no one can take our power away. So today we're talking about freedom from forgiveness. So we have an affirmation that we're saying for this whole month. Let's say it together. I forgive everyone in my past for all perceived wrongs. I send them loving energy and I feel peace. That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? So we're moving into this July 4th weekend, and we're usually in this celebratory mood talking about freedom and independence, but I just have to tell you that my heart has been heavy. My heart has been sad for all of the things that we are witnessing in our world, in our planet, in our country. All of these things, and this particular thing that happened this last week when those 51 people perished in the back of a transport truck, less than 30 minutes from where I was raised, near San Antonio, Texas. And my heart was just so sad because all I could think of was these people just wanted freedom. They just wanted a better way of living. How can something like this in this day and time happen? How can these things unfold? And my mind is just trying to work through this struggle of understanding all the shootings and everything else, and yet knowing what we know about truth and knowing what we know about these spiritual principles that we espouse. We know that we have tools in our toolbox. And so I had to keep going back. Every time my heart would feel so heavy, I would go back and I would remember God is all there is. Isn't that principle one? God is all there is. The second principle, we are divine. We are expressions of God. The third principle, what we think, what we believe, what we say, what we do determines our lives, right? And the fourth one, I pray. We pray and we meditate and we lift our consciousness above the seeming chaos that we're observing. And then the last one is we live the truth that we know. We live the knowing that God is all there is. And so when these things happen, we have to move to this place within ourselves of knowing that there is a divine plan. Even if it looks chaotic, even if it looks like it doesn't make any sense, we have to know the truth. We have to lift our consciousness above the chaos and see God in everything, you see. That's part of the knowing, how we can move through, and that's how we find that freedom that we're so much wanting, is to see it with different eyes, to not see it from the ego, not to see it from the problem, because we can solve nothing in seeing things from the problem. The only way to solve it is to lift our consciousness up and to see God in it. It's a mighty work. But we know we can do it. We know we are all here because we are light workers and the planet needs us to do this work. That's why we're here now at this particular time in our history. There is a great old Unity book that's entitled Beyond a Miracle, and it's by Sue Sicking. And she says the greatest prescription for a healthy body and a full life is to forgive and forget, to cleanse our own mind, that the divine plan of God may be set free to carry on its perfect work of renewal and recreation. Each one of us, you see, is bringing forth a divine plan. We all are coming together to decide what we're going to forgive and what we're going to forget. Because the fact of the matter is, what we don't choose to forgive weighs us down, doesn't it? If we can't forgive the people who caused the seeming chaos, we end up having the heaviness in our heart that it won't go away. And so we get to choose. We get to decide, what are we going to forgive and what are we going to hang on to? Because we have this tendency to kind of punish ourselves by failing to respect the laws of God. We are each given power over the law, but we have to accept it, you see. That's the thing. We have the power over our own minds. That's the power that we have to change things around us, is when we change the way we're thinking about it, the way we're seeing it. So guess what? You're choosing heaven or you're choosing hell. That's the choice that we have in our consciousness. Are we choosing to stay in that place? Are we choosing to see things? It's really pretty simple, isn't it? It's all about our consciousness. It's what you expect. It's what you're looking for. It's what you think will happen, right? So maybe it's simple and maybe it's not. I just recently started this quantum living class with a bunch of other Unity ministers, and I'm in like the second or third week of it now. And it was started by Dr. Gary Simmons and Jane, his wife, and Rima Bonario. And it's basically the art and practice of knowing that nothing and no one is against you. Think about that. It means that you are living in a supportive universe that is here to create with you that which your heart desires, right? And there's no one stopping you. There's nothing stopping you. It's just you in creation mode. And so what's really interesting about this work is that it makes you go back and it makes you look at those things like from your childhood that caused you to feel shame or blame or guilt or whatever, you know, and it's usually a parent or some well-meaning Sunday school teacher or something, you know, from your childhood. And, you know, I thought I had done all of that forgiveness work, and yet I still came back to this thing that my mom did when I was little. And I'm still doing that healing work. And so this whole process of this class is to take those things from the darkness, those shadows that are still lurking in our subconscious, and bring them into the light and heal them, because that way they can no longer help us live from that place that's wounded, right? So we want to heal those things, and we want to know that that's not the truth of us. Someone said you were stupid, or someone said something to you and it hurt. You know it's not the truth of you. We are all precious and special beings. So this whole process of awakening and identifying these blocks so we can transform them from the inside out. it's just amazing how healing that work can be when we go back and realize that that is truly not the truth of us. Well, there's this gentleman, is a PhD, Fred Luskin, and he's been studying forgiveness for a long time. And for years, he tells the story of this gentleman, we'll just call him Al, whose wife and 2 sons were killed by the neighbor who was a drunken driver. Now, you can just imagine that dynamic of having this neighbor right there, right? Well, the gentleman, the neighbor goes to jail, and some time passes, and Al decides to go to the prison to visit his neighbor. And so he does. He prays up about it, and he gets there, and you can just imagine how tough the conversation is for both of the men, the neighbor and for Al, right? But when Al gets there, he asks the neighbor, how is it, he says, how is your son doing since you've been in prison? And the neighbor pauses for a moment, and he says, well, you know, he's too young to come and visit, so I don't actually know how he's doing. And in that moment, Al has this shift in his consciousness, and he moves into this place of forgiveness in his heart, and he decides that he's going to do something to help this man be reunited with his son, because he knows what it feels like to not have his sons in his life. By being willing to focus on the neighbor's son, he could begin to release those negative emotions and create some good from the accident. Can you imagine the amount of forgiveness that took for him to get to that place? Dr. Luskin says in the past, forgiveness was limited sort of to religious and political discussions, but today it's part of psychology, spirituality, emotional well-being. You see forgiveness talked about in all kinds of circles, because he says it's a skill people can practice to lead lives of compassion, lives of peace, and lives of service. Because you see, you know, we live in a culture of stress and anger. You see all the divisiveness around us all the time. And people are looking for solutions. People want it to be healed. People are tired of this, aren't they? I'm tired of witnessing it, so I know you must be too. People are looking for solutions. A corrective measure is needed, and the most complete and strongest corrective measure is forgiveness. You know, unity.org, our main website, has created, knowing what's going on the planet, has created a place on the website. It's called Anxious and Angry, Reclaim Your Spiritual Center. And you can go to unity.org and find that title that has all topics on there. And you will find videos, meditations, articles, booklets, and all kinds of things. So when you feel like I did this last week, there is a resource for you. You don't have to sit in that. You can move your consciousness to another level by using the resources that have been created to help you move through. That's why we call Unity Practical Christianity. We want to give you the tools to help you move through these things that you are witnessing in your life. In metaphysics, we know that it's important for us to have a personal inventory, to take time to reflect on what's going on in our heads, in our minds, in our thoughts, right? We need to be able to identify what's going on so we can actually cleanse those things out. And so forgiveness releases us from the mental and emotional bondage that we are experiencing in reacting to situations that we see around us. Now I take you to the scriptures, and we metaphysically interpret the Bible, so it's a little bit different. We're in Luke chapter 6, verse 37 and 38. You're familiar with this one. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure that you get back. To me, that's all about consciousness. It's about being in that place of knowing that God is love and that you can love any situation. Hatred and hostility are states of mind that are just coming and going, that enter into our personal consciousness. But to overcome them, we have to rise above that personal consciousness into that knowingness of the Christ within us. That love is the unchanging rule. And when we do this, when we realize the truth that God is love and that all persons are in various degrees of God in manifestation, everybody is. There isn't anybody that is not a piece, a part of God. So it helps us then to move through that place of forgiveness, where you can love someone that was seemingly an enemy just as easily as you can love your best friend. Those are the tools that we have. We should give from that consciousness of knowing that God is an unlimited source of supply for whatever it is that we need. And so when we give freely, we give our love, we share our light, it comes back to us tenfold, doesn't it? That's why you can't outgive God, because it's always there. The standard of divine bounty always comes back to us generously. Well, next to our Bible is Emily Cady's Lessons in Truth. And in Lessons in Truth, Emily says, to forgive does not simply mean to arrive at a place of indifference to those who do personal injury to us. It means far more than this. To forgive is to give to give some actual definite good in return for evil given. All things, she says, the very circumstances in your life that seem like heartbreaking evils to you, will turn to joy before your very eyes if you will steadfastly refuse to see anything but God in the midst of it. Jesus was our greatest role model for that, wasn't he? All the forgiveness that he did of all the people who tried to do him wrong, right? He was the best example. So this is the high road that we choose. This is the consciousness we strive for, isn't it? To know God in the midst of all appearances, no matter how dire things can seem. Today's daily word was absolutely perfect. It said, living from my Christ nature sets me free. When we find freedom, we realize life doesn't happen to us. It says in the daily word, it happens through us. We are co-creating with God every moment. The Buddha said, to understand everything is to forgive everything. And I think that's wonderful, wonderful advice. That's how we can be totally free. All right, enough preaching. Time for a little joke. So there's this kindergarten teacher, and she has the students drawing. She's walking around, and she's sort of observing what the kids are drawing, and she comes to this one little girl's space, and she says, what is it that you are drawing? And the little girl says, I'm making a picture of God. And the teacher said, but nobody really knows what God looks like. And without blinking an eye, she said, they will in a moment. The wisdom of the young, huh? I want to close today with the surrender experiment, Michael Singer. He says, people often ask me how I look at things now that I've gone through the life-changing experiences of these past 40 years. How could I possibly explain the great freedom that comes from realizing to the depth of your being that life knows what it's doing. Only direct experience can take you there. At some point, there's no more struggle, just the deep peace that comes from surrendering to a perfection that is beyond your comprehension. Eventually, even the mind stops resisting, and the heart loses the tendency to close. The joy, excitement, and freedom are simply too beautiful to give up. Once you are ready to let go of yourself, life becomes your friend, your teacher, your secret lover. When life's way becomes your way, all the noise stops, and there is great peace in eternal gratitude for all the experiences we call life. That is my wish for each of you. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now is the time in our service when we get to give from our good back into this sweet community. So I invite you to take your offerings and tithes in your hands, and we'll say our blessing together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so.